Hello, my name is Susan Hood and I'm here from the Representative Church Body Library. Once again, it's a great pleasure to collaborate with the IGRS in presenting to you an introduction to the records of the Church of Ireland, the Church of Ireland being the Episcopal or Anglican Church in Ireland. A Reformed Catholic Church, a very small church, but because the immigration of Protestant people from Ireland goes back to the 17th and 18th centuries, its records and particularly its registers have a relevance for people throughout the world, not least America, but North America, Canada, but also Australia, New Zealand, Britain, and many other parts of the world. For clarity, the RCB, or Representative Church Body, is the trust that manages Church of Ireland properties and their contents, the churches, cathedrals, and the records, many of the records of the church are now held in the RCB's library, located in Churchtown in Dublin. So the starting point for people using or wishing to use Church of Ireland records is the Church of Ireland's website. And on the website there is a link, a drop-down link to the RCB library, where you'll get all kinds of information about our location, the catalogues to our main categories of records, various digitisation projects that are going on, and most specifically and relevant for genealogical research, the list, the now definitive list of parish registers. Incidentally, the creation of this list represents a very positive collaboration between the RCB and the IGRS, where we work together to colour code and make more accessible the information about every single parish and its records, whether or not they survive, where they are, and the dates covered. Many of the Church of Ireland's records are now located in central custody in the RCB library. We hold over 1,100 collections in Dublin. The colour code for everything in the RCB library is yellow, but there are, of course, records elsewhere. About 250 collections remain in local custody. There's a smaller quantity represented by the purple colour in Prony in Belfast, and then the green colour indicates records that tragically were lost in 1922. However, more survives than is more often supposed, and where original records were lost, there are also transcripts and copies that have been made. So the definitive list now available through the Church of Ireland website gives you all of that information, where everything is, where copies may exist, what's available to search on the World Wide Web, and also for those collections of records in the RCB library, you can click and throw up the hand list, which shows you the details, breakdown of the details of the registers in the context of other records for each parish that are also in existence. So I'm going to work my way through now some of the most relevant records for genealogical research. First of all, paying tribute to the fact that all of these records have started in local parish custody. And we must pay tribute to the clergy and the generations of local parishioners and officers and others who have kept safe these records. Originally, they would have started out probably just as loose leaves, some of the earliest ones, in parish chests like this. And in recent years, and since the creation of the library in the 1930s, many local clergy have taken pride and pleasure in placing their collections in the permanent custody of the church's central holding in the library. So the first and oldest type of register that you might be lucky enough to encounter of relevance when carrying out your research is known as the combined register. Some of these registers are the oldest, in fact, to survive on the island of Ireland. And they're combined because they include the baptisms, marriages and burials in the one volume. Here we can see this is in fact the earliest surviving parish register in existence. It dates from February 1619 for the parish of St. John in Dublin. And it opens with the words, "A true register of all marriages and burials and christenings that have been done," spelled D-O-N, "in St. John's parish since its foundation day of February 1619 by me," spelled M-E-E, kept, Bartholomew Jordan Clark. So the rector is writing his opening brief to tell the reader that this is a combined register of the three big events in somebody's life: christenings, marriages, burials. The medium used for this register was, as I've said, loose leaves of vellum, a very precious commodity. And because of the preciousness of the medium, every single inch of the page was used up for making entries. And as a result, everything kind of is together. You can have a couple of christenings, a couple of burials, followed by a whole page of marriages or whatever. So there's no particular order to these very early records. And as a result, you need more time to explore them sometimes to make sure you haven't missed anything. Another point to make is that because they started out as loose leaves as opposed to being in a book, it may, through the centuries, be the case that a page or two got lost, or when they later came to be bound together in a bookbinders, they may have been bound out of order. So it's always important when using combined registers to work your way through all of the pages. From the early 19th century, when printing becomes cheaper and it's possible to create pro forma registers, all of the churches, including the Church of Ireland, began to use printed pro forma records, and basically to divide up the key events, the baptisms, marriages and burials, into their own designated books. So here we see an example of a piece of evidence, the baptism, as it happens, of William Butler Yeats, who had been born on the 13th of June, 1865. And his parents, John Butler and Susan Mary, took him to the local parish church in Donnybrook in Dublin a month later, on the 12th of July, 1865, for Christian baptism. The interesting thing about this layout is it's much, much easier to use because you can actually scan your way down through the surname column. The vital evidence that is provided here includes details of the names of the child's parents, the date of birth as well as the date of baptism, where the family were living, and the quality, trade or profession of the father. Also, incidentally, the name of the person who celebrated the ceremony. And sometimes there's very telling information about the cleric. There's a family connection, or there's maybe a story behind why a particular person baptizes or marries or even buries another. So the next category of record then is the marriage. And the pro forma marriage registers, as this example shows, provide great content indeed. And the critical thing about marriage registers, as you'll already have learned from other presentations about the civil records, is they give you the previous generation. So the names of the parties involved in the marriage, their age, their job, if they had one, their rank or profession, but also the details of their father and what their father, the bride and groom's father, did, what their jobs were. And also another interesting aspect of the marriage register, as laid out in this pro format, from 1845 onwards is that it includes the signatures of the parties involved and indeed the people who witnessed the marriage. The third type of record is the burial register. Now, the burial registers, by and large, are very limited in the information they provide because they simply give the name of the person brought for Christian burial, their age, where they were living, and that's it. But occasionally, and particularly for very early burial registers, because the Church of Ireland was the state church up until its establishment in 1870, it was responsible for the burials of everybody in a local community. And in this particular example, from the parish of St. Werburgh's in Dublin, the clerics at the time, in the early 18th century and all the way through the 18th century, took the trouble to record what people had died of in a specially designated column. And the details of burials also include where in the churchyard they were actually buried. Now, unfortunately, this practice was relatively rare, and by and large, for burials, what you get for a given parish is simply this pro forma layout, as I've said, the name of the person buried, where they lived, the date of the burial as opposed to the date of death, their age at death, and the name of the clergy person who performed the ceremony. So people are often disappointed that they will come to us or they'll go to a local church expecting to learn where in a burial ground somebody is actually buried. And unfortunately, the burials don't tell you this. Nor will a burial register give you information about a funeral in a church. This is quite different to the Catholic records. The Church of Ireland records of burial will only tell you that a person was buried on a particular date. So that is a limitation. However, a very important other source of evidence within the collections of parish records are the preachers' books. Now, the preachers' books record services held on a weekly, sometimes a daily basis, who the preacher was, the number of people attending the service, if there was a collection, how much money was collected. And because the preachers' books have an observations column, sometimes extra information is recorded in that column, including here in this example from the preachers' books for Clones in the 1830s, we see the record of old Mrs. Fitzgerald's funeral having taken place. So we would urge people, if they're not getting the information they require about, for example, they know that an ancestor, the funeral service was held in a particular church, sometimes the preacher's books are worth consulting in case they tell you, well, the funeral was held here and the burial went on to another location. The next category of record that I like to talk about are the records of the vestry. As you'll see from the hand lists that are available of the parish collections in the RCB library, many collections of parish registers exist in the wider context of the records created by the vestry, which was and remains the committee that manages each individual parish. Now, because of the Church of Ireland's status as the established church up until 1870, the government really used the parish and its administrative structures as the units of local government. And as a result, the vestry and the parish itself of the Church of Ireland was responsible for, as I've said, burying the dead, also for the upkeep of the poor. In city areas, large urban areas, it was responsible for keeping the streets lit at night and for policing the parish watch, for keeping the parish secure. And occasionally the records of the vestry, the minute books of the vestry include, and its ancillary records, include really very valuable information about local society. So we're looking now at an example, a very early example, all too rare unfortunately, of the poor monies collected from the inner city parish of St. Werburgh in Dublin. These date from 1641. And basically what you're looking at here is a street-by-street account of who is paying what to support the upkeep of the poor. Now, it's not, unfortunately, naming the names of the poor, but it is giving you a sense of the worth of the people who lived on a street-by-street basis in that parish. So here we see the occupants of Skinner Row and Castle Street South in St. Werburgh's, Dublin, for 1641. A very rare and valuable source indeed. Two final categories of records that I'd like to talk about are the clerical succession lists for those of you who are lucky enough to have ancestors who might have been ordained clergy in the Church of Ireland. The work of J.B. Leslie, who we see here, who was a member of the Church of Ireland clergy at the turn of the 19th century, spent an enormous amount of time tracking the genealogies of clerical families. And his work, using sources that not all of which survive because he spent a lot of time in the Public Record Office before 1922, his work has been used for years in its typescript form. In the library, we continue to hold and make available on a daily basis alphabetical lists of the clergy who served in the Church of Ireland. And these alphabetical lists direct people to diocesan succession lists, which give details of the biographies and family details and the clerical careers of really all of the clergy who served in the church, who serve and continue to serve in the Church of Ireland. Leslie's work in recent years has been supplemented by others, namely Canon David Crooks, who's still a cleric in Donegal, and Ronnie Wallace, a retired history teacher. And they have brought up to date and published now all except one of the diocesan clerical succession lists. So it's possible now remotely, because many of these books are printed in print and therefore available through your libraries, or indeed through the RCB library, where you can consult the original typescripts. And we've certainly seen many descendants of clerical families very much appreciate if you like, that somebody else has done the work, has actually unpicked the genealogies of the clerical families and made their research relatively easy. And the final source that I'd like to talk briefly about, which is now accessible through our website, is the Church of Ireland Gazette. An ongoing project to digitise what is the weekly newspaper of the Church. It was started in 1856 and more or less from the 1870s certainly has been published on a weekly basis. And you can we've made this freely available at the moment up until 1923. We hope to get up to the 1940s before the end of 2018. And there's a very simple search box. You just go in, again, coming back to our website, which is the point of all access. You just put in the keyword or the name of the family that you're interested in, and you would be surprised by the range and detail of information provided by this very pretty sophisticated digitization project. So to conclude then, the starting point for anybody doing research, not only about members of the Church of Ireland, but also particularly for the early period, which predates civil registration, for other members of society who may have been buried, or perhaps intermarried into the Church of Ireland, are records available for consultation in the library and local custody. Your starting point is the Church of Ireland website. Thank you.